Imagine walking through a crowded street in a medieval city. The roads are narrow, the air smells foul, and the ground beneath your feet is covered in mud, waste, and animal remains. Suddenly, a window above you opens. Without warning, a bucket of human waste is thrown straight into the street. It splashes just a few feet away from you. No one screams. No one looks shocked, because in the Middle Ages, this was completely normal. And that's only one of the things people casually accepted back then. In medieval Europe, practices that would lead to arrest, prison, or national outrage today were simply part of everyday life. Some of them were disturbing, others were brutally cruel, and the last one might be the most shocking thing you've ever heard about this era. One of the most revolting aspects of medieval life was something people dealt with every single day, and no one thought twice about it. Cities had no sewer systems, no pipes, no sanitation infrastructure of any kind. People used chamber pots inside their homes, and when those pots were full, they simply opened the window and threw the contents into the street below. There was even a warning cry people would shout before dumping, Gardez-l'eau, derived from the French garde à l'eau, meaning watch out for the water. But here's the detail most history books leave out. In cities like medieval London and Paris, the build-up of waste in the streets became so severe that it could reach the height of a man's knee. Entire neighborhoods developed a thick crust of filth on the ground that never fully dried. People didn't just walk through it, they lived in it. Today, this would be considered a public health catastrophe, and anyone dumping waste from a window would face immediate legal consequences. But the streets were not the only disturbing part of medieval life. Some of the most shocking practices involved something far more personal, and they started when children were still very young. In medieval Europe, girls could be legally married as young as 12 years old, in some regions even younger, with special permission from the church.
I now pronounce you husband and wife. May God bless this holy union.
These marriages were rarely about love. They were transactions, arrangements made between families to secure political alliances, transfer land, or consolidate power.
The pact is sealed. Whoa. Your hand in marriage unites our lands. A powerful alliance indeed.
But what most people don't know is that the church actually played an active role in enforcing these unions. Annulments were nearly impossible to obtain, which meant young girls had almost no legal way out, regardless of what happened to them inside the marriage.
You must pledge your devotion to the divine, not to each other.
We understand, Father.
Do you? Prove it.
Today, this would be prosecuted as child marriage in virtually every country in the world. But as disturbing as that is, what happened in public spaces during the Middle Ages was somehow even more revealing about how different life truly was. In medieval Europe, an execution wasn't a somber private affair. It was a social event.
Do you think he'll confess? He's refused so far. Let's pray for his soul.
Crowds gathered in city squares to watch hangings, beheadings, and burnings at the stake. Families brought their children. Vendors moved through the crowd selling bread, meat, and ale. And here's the detail that tends to leave people speechless. There was a secondary market for souvenirs made from the condemned. Locks of hair, pieces of rope used in hangings, even fragments of clothing were sold to spectators as keepsakes. People didn't leave disturbed. They left satisfied, as if they had attended a fair. Today, public executions would be considered a severe violation of human rights. The idea of selling souvenirs from an execution would be incomprehensible. But death wasn't only delivered by executioners. Sometimes it came from the very people meant to keep you alive. If you fell ill in the Middle Ages, your best hope was to find someone who called themselves a physician.
Help him, please. He's very sick. Quickly, in here. Give him to me.
The problem? Almost anyone could claim that title.
Next, who will be first to receive treatment? My arm troubles me, physician.
Be strong, child.
There was no licensing, no formal training requirement, no oversight of any kind. Common treatments included bloodletting, draining large quantities of blood from a patient under the belief it would restore balance, and applying live leeches to the skin to remove excess humors. But the detail most people find genuinely shocking is this. Many medieval physicians used urine as a primary diagnostic tool. They would taste it, smell it, and hold it up to the light, sometimes for several minutes, before prescribing treatment. And if the treatment killed the patient, there was no legal consequence whatsoever. Today, practicing medicine without a license carries serious criminal penalties in every developed country. Yet even more bizarre than unlicensed doctors were the legal proceedings that sometimes followed a death, especially when the accused couldn't speak in their own defense. In medieval Europe, it was not unheard of for animals to stand trial in a court of law.
You are accused of trespassing and causing destruction to the land.
What do you say in your defense?
Pigs were prosecuted for killing children. Rats were summoned to court for destroying crops. Insects were accused of damaging harvests. In some cases, animals were assigned legal defense attorneys, and those attorneys argued their cases seriously before actual judges. One of the most documented cases occurred in 1386 in Falaise, France. A pig was formally tried, convicted of mutilating a child, and publicly executed, dressed in human clothing to make the punishment more humiliating. The philosophical reasoning behind this was deeply tied to medieval religious thinking. If the world was governed by divine law, then every creature within it was subject to that law. Today, this sounds almost comical, but at the time, it was treated with complete legal seriousness. And while animals were being tried in courts, human beings were being subjected to punishments so extreme they would be unthinkable under any modern legal system. There in the Middle Ages, punishment for even minor crimes could be spectacularly brutal. Caught stealing a loaf of bread, you might have your hand cut off. Spoke ill of a nobleman, you could be branded on the face with a hot iron, permanently marked for the rest of your life. Caused a public disturbance, you might find yourself locked in the stocks in the town square, where strangers were encouraged to throw rotten food, animal waste, and rocks at you for days. But here's the detail that most people don't know. In many regions, punishments were deliberately designed to be disproportionate, not to fit the crime, but to serve as a warning to everyone watching. The cruelty was the message, and the crowds who watched, they didn't protest, they cheered. Today, these punishments would be classified as cruel and unusual, explicitly banned under international human rights law. But none of this, not the waste, not the child marriages, not the executions or the animal trials, compares to what was perhaps the most institutionalized cruelty of the entire medieval period. Of everything we've discussed today, this last one may be the most disturbing because it wasn't a crime, an accident, or an exception. It was a legal right. In many parts of medieval Europe, a feudal lord had the claimed right to do almost anything to the peasants living on his land. He could force them to work without pay for days at a time, a practice called corvée labor. He could take a portion of everything they grew, everything they built, everything they owned. But the detail that crosses every line is this. In some regions, lords claimed the right to tax peasants simply for getting married, and in extreme documented cases, demanded compensation for any child born on their land, as if the peasants themselves were property. Peasants who resisted could be beaten, imprisoned, or expelled, losing their home, their land, and everything they had built, with no legal recourse of any kind. This wasn't the exception. For the majority of people living in medieval Europe, this was life. Today, forced labor and the legal ownership of people's reproductive rights would be considered crimes against humanity. The Middle Ages were not just castles, knights, and romantic legends. For most people, it was a world where cruelty was codified, suffering was ordinary, and the powerful operated without limits. What we've uncovered today is not just history. It's a reminder of how recently, in the span of human civilization, the idea of basic human dignity didn't exist in any legal form. And that raises a question worth sitting with. What are we accepting today that future generations will look back on with the same horror? If that question interests you, subscribe to Savage Centuries, because history was far more savage than you think, and we're just getting started.